your friends. You'll be helping to shut out impaired driving.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
You're watching Rogers TV.
And welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson, the personal finance show focused on moving you forward financially. On today's show, we're talking about credit card debt because it's on the rise. And according to a recent survey, the city of Barrie leads the country when it comes to credit card debt. So joining me now to talk about the survey and share her advice on managing and paying down credit card debt is Kirsten Bradley, Senior Insolvency Advisor with BDO Debt Solutions. Kirsten, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Shannon, for having me. So
before we get into our topic, can you talk about a little bit about your background and what you do at BDO?
Definitely. So I'm a senior insolvency advisor at BDO, and BDO, of course, is a company that has a variety of different levels and services, accounting, consulting, and debt solutions, which is where I work. My job basically is to meet and advise people who are struggling, maybe with their debt, maybe they're feeling overwhelmed, or maybe they just need a fresh set of eyes to look at their budget.
Well, today we're focusing on a survey that came out from money.ca regarding the top 10 cities in the country that are carrying the most credit card debt. Now, this is probably not the top 10 list that we want to be a part of, but according to money.ca, the city of Barrie ranks as the top city in the country when it comes to credit card debt. And Barrie residents are carrying an average of $3,521.54 in outstanding credit card balances. Now, money.ca analyzed data from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, or CMHC, to figure out or discover the metropolitan areas that are accumulating the most credit card debt. So that's how they came up with this survey. So Kirsten, can you talk a little bit about the survey results and what other communities are on this list in Canada?
Well, it's unfortunately, it's, as you said, not one of those lists that we want to be number one on. And it is quite surprising because we actually are even beating out Toronto when it comes to the amount of credit card debt that Barrie residents are holding. There are a variety of areas that are surprisingly not far from the kind of the hub of Toronto. We've got Peterborough, Bradford, Kingston, Hamilton, and even Thunder Bay. So, what are we surprised that there are so many considering our population? No, but it is surprising that we're beating out all the other provinces in terms of the number of cities that are kind of hitting this top 10 list.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's sort of a sign of the times because it seems, 7 or I think eight out of the 10 on this list are cities in Ontario. And now, of course, Ontario does have the largest population, of course, in all of Canada. So that part sort of makes sense, but it also speaks to what our region is facing as well when we're sort of carrying this debt load. And when I did a quick calculation, so Hamilton is in position number 10. And there's only a $250 difference between number 10 and number 1, which is Barrie. So there isn't a large spread, but again, Barrie ends up being on the top of this list. So unfortunately, we're sort of perhaps known for something we don't want to be known for. So Kirsten, when you see these numbers and how people in Ontario are struggling, are you seeing a trend of sort of this increase in credit card usage?
Definitely. I think when you really look at the big picture of where our inflation rates are in terms of our housing costs, our groceries, our gas, our interest rates, everything. Even the idea that really we are still in a post-pandemic spending frenzy in some ways. People have held off going traveling, entertaining. Now they're wanting to go out and they're wanting to enjoy themselves. But the problem is that they're depending on their credit cards to do so. We are seeing that, and we're noticing even from the people that I'm meeting that there's definitely seems to be an increase for sure.
And I think there is some trending reports coming out as well.
That's correct. So Equifax Canada Consumer Trends does a report every year on watching how consumers are using credit. Right now, what is absolutely staggering is the fact that debt has now hit 2.45 trillion. So that's gone up 3.2% from previous years. So when you look at that, plus the idea that our non-mortgage debt has risen by 4.1%. It's now sitting at $116 billion. 15 billion of that is credit card, and that was in 2023. So you look at those numbers and think, we are really kind of continuing to build our debt and build sort of that overwhelming concern when it comes to how much debt we're carrying. So I think the sort of statistic that really I found the most kind of staggering, I guess would be the word, is that in the fourth quarter of 2023, 6 million new credit cards were actually issued. And these credit cards, what we're also seeing is that they're offering a greater availability of credit. It used to be we'd get credit cards and people were having smaller limits to them. Now we're seeing these numbers are going even higher as they start to compete against each other. When we're burdened with this debt, the challenge is, how do we pay it off? How do we stay under control? And how do we keep those credit limits in a position that we can cover?
And are you seeing this with the clients that you meet with on a regular basis? It seems like what you mentioned there about the 6 million new cards were issued just in the last quarter of 2023. That's a large amount of credit cards being applied for, and you can make the assumption they are being used. So are you seeing with the clients that you meet with that more people have much larger credit card debt than previously?
Definitely. There has always been in the past a trend when we see sort of a demographic that we seem to be connecting with, whether it's people going through different changes in life, that those boundaries are broken now. We are seeing all ages, all stages of life, people being impacted in so many different ways that the number one impact and their credit is the credit cards. They're high interest. They're in a situation where they can't pay them because they're now depending on these for the first time ever to actually cover their home essentials, their groceries. They're using them for things that were not something that they'd had to depend on in the past.
And with this new application of all these new cards, it could be a situation as well where we're using credit to pay off credit to sort of get us through that low point of trying to manage the debt maybe that we're trying to handle. And I know I'm seeing that as well with the people that I meet with. I'm noticing more credit cards in their possession than previously, but also higher balances as well. So the trends that we're seeing in these surveys, I think, are definitely relevant and concerning. And so, Kirsten, I think it's important for viewers to be aware of the financial risks of using credit cards specifically. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, of course, the one risk that we see, along with having to deal with the stress of that financial burden, is that, of course, you're using that card to pay another card. You're not necessarily being able to pay that off to its full balance. When you carry a balance every month, the interest rate and the interest impact on that debt, of course, is building your balance higher. So people are struggling to make that minimum payment, only to find that when they look at their statement the next month, it's exactly the same balance again. They're not getting anywhere. So, they're using it also for things like cash advances. And a cash advance, of course, you're sitting at a higher interest rate and you're paying interest on that money from the moment you withdraw the funds. So when they're using that, instead of just using it as a way to build their credit, they're using it as an extension of their income. And that's where the concern definitely falls with, taking things a little too far in terms of their debt.
I think as well with credit cards and the interest rates that they provide, it is one of the most expensive types of debts that we have access to, I think.
Definitely that. And I mean, obviously there are predatory lenders that are out there with very high interest rates. But when it comes to general credit offers, credit cards are definitely the highest interest rates that are out there.
Can you talk a little bit about our sort of utilization of these credit cards? You mentioned about sort of maxing them out or using them to their limit. Is that a positive impact or a negative impact on our credit report? Do you have any insight on that?
It's very much a negative impact. Again, the idea, people seem to be under the impression that as long as I'm making my minimum payment, my credit score shouldn't be impacted, but that's not the case. 30% of your score is looking at that utilization. And when you have a maxed out credit card or anything beyond sort of that 25 to 30% use, you're actually watching your score drop. So even though you're making those minimum payments, it's not taking your score in the right direction. All that hard work to pay things on time, as soon as it hits a sort of use beyond that 30%, you're going to start watching your score drop. And of course, the lower your score, the higher the interest rates that these companies are going to offer you. The harder it's going to be able to move yourself out of this by getting some help in various methods from different banks or lenders. Even our mortgages, we're going to look at higher interest rates as our score starts to drop. So the impact is pretty significant.
Yeah, no, I see what you're trying to say there. And I think it's hard with us when we get that new offer in the mail from the random credit card company that is giving us some kind of a deal on our interest rate for a 6 month or 1 year period of time, and we might see it as that opportunity to be able to pay the credit card debt that we have so that we can maybe move the balance of one card to this new card to try to cut the interest rate and hopefully make larger payments. But a lot of that has to do with it's not a bad way of thinking, because obviously you're trying to reduce the amount of interest that you want to pay on these cards. But it also, in conjunction with that, we also, I think, need a change in our behavior to make sure that we make that a priority to try to pay that off as quickly as possible. Are you seeing any sort of trending things with the clients that you're meeting with respect to that?
So, I think that the key piece, and I always say to clients, is they really need to look at how they're using their cards. What are they using these? Are they using this as sort of a lifeline to get through to the next month? And finding ways to be able to make those changes, finding ways to be able to reduce the debt that they actually have. And simple things to check are things, even checking our statements. A lot of times we forget to look at what type of subscriptions or streaming companies are we being charged for that maybe we're not even using. Are we making a lot of purchases online? It's so convenient, and we learned how convenient that was, but maybe we need to make a change there. I often suggest to people, leave that credit card at home. Don't carry it. It's not something that you want to be constantly using. Yes, there's some benefits and points and etc. But when you're so overextended, those points don't balance out. It doesn't make sense. It's not benefiting you. You want to make sure to get control of the debt so that you can start to use that credit responsibly.
Well, if you're struggling to manage your credit card debt and you're looking for some great advice, Kirsten's going to have some more coming for you when Money Matters returns after the break.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Summer days, summer nights, lots of things to do, places to go, and people to see. If you're having a few drinks, be sure to plan ahead and get home safely. We don't want to pick you up. Drinking drivers risk injuries to themselves and others and take chances with their license, their jobs, and their future. Remember what's at stake and choose your ride, whether you're the driver, the passenger, or the party host. Thanks for supporting sober driving. I hope we never meet.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
Welcome back to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. My guest today is Kirsten Bradley, Senior Insolvency Advisor at BDO Debt Solutions. And today we're discussing the latest Money.ca survey that shows that the city of Barrie leads the country when it comes to credit card debt. And in fact, the survey shows that 7 of the top 10 cities in the country are located in Ontario, in our own province. And Kirsten, before the break, we were talking about that survey and the latest Equifax Canada data that shows that Canadians try and cope with rising costs. Of course, many of us are leaning on credit to make ends meet, and our monthly balances are on the rise, which of course then is leading to more and more missed payments and delinquencies and things like that. And as people struggle to keep up, they worry about their debt, especially credit card debt. The latest BDO Affordability Index shows that just under 1 in 3 Canadians admit that they're most stressed about credit card debt. And it's no wonder, really, because as you shared earlier, the debt can quickly get away from us. And it is the highest interest, or one of the most highest interest type of debt that we could be carrying. So I want to focus a little bit more on giving some advice for our viewers who are concerned, particularly with credit card debt. Do you have any advice on how we can avoid first falling into that credit card trap?
Definitely. It seems like such a simple thing, but unfortunately we are creatures of habit. And so often we will use those cards for things that aren't necessary. And it's become a tap world. We can tap our cards, we can tap so easily without realizing the impact of that purchase that we just made. So as I mentioned, before, you want to leave the cards at home. Don't carry them. Try to avoid using them unless it's something like an emergency or you've set a budgeted purchase on that card to move forward with. That's really an important piece because you want the credit to still continue growing if you're not burdened with debt, but you want to use it responsibly. You want to avoid those online purchases. You want to check the statements for any unnecessary purchases that you're making or things that you've signed up for. And then you also want to reach out because if you're consistently making payments and using your card in such a way, you might be eligible for a lower rate with the company that you're currently with. So that's also something to look at. Now, of course, there are ways to look at being able to pay this debt down as well. And a very sort of simple way when you have multiple cards and multiple debt that you're dealing with is something that they call the snowball method. And I think that's kind of a fun way to look at being able to pay off your debt. But it really involves taking the right steps to look at your smallest debt, making the minimum payments on all the other ones, but maximizing as much of a repayment to that smallest one until it's paid off. And then you're rolling that onto the next debt, making that so that one by one, you're getting rid of that debt, transferring, of course, that extra payment each time onto the next card involved, paying them off, watching that sort of taken care of. And then, as I said before, leave the cards at home. you don't need to continue to use them. There's a misconception, I think, from a lot of people that I have to leave a balance, that somehow that's going to help my credit, and that's not the case. If the snowball method isn't working, there's also things, you might be eligible to be able to get a consolidation loan. That might be something that's going to help, where at least your payments are now all linked together. Monthly payment. You might be able to feel a little bit better and a little more control of the budget by having that kind of condensed amount at a lower interest rate. That it is going to be lower than the credit card. But if that's not working, sometimes it involves getting some professional help, looking for someone to be able to give you some solutions and other options. That's where coming to see someone like myself would be beneficial.
I like that you make that comment about just checking your statements, because it's so easy to fall into those traps of the subscriptions that we sign up for. And you think that you might be just getting a subscription for a 3-month period, and then it will automatically stop and you won't have to worry about it again. But then you realize it carries from month to month until you actually go in there and cancel that subscription. And it's so easy to do on all of these apps that we get caught up in. And it's almost surprising how much we can just sign up for without thinking. So I agree about just reviewing those things on a regular basis. Make sure that you're just paying for the things that you actually need, and going from there. And that method as well of the snowball of paying the lowest balance and then just building up and building up, because it's surprising how motivating it can be as you start to see those balances decrease, and you put the dedication and work into paying off that debt load. I think often people are surprised that it can be quite satisfying and fulfilling to be able to do that on your own. So those are really great tips. Now, it's talking about reaching out to a professional like yourself. What type of discussions do you have with clients when they come to meet with you?
So when someone comes to connect, we obviously will do a complete review of their budget, along with looking at the types and amounts of each of their debt. Obviously their budget is going to be a big factor in the solutions that we have for them. Being able to look at the options, but I think what their goals are when it comes to their debt as well. Are they looking to try to get things taken care of, through something like a consolidation loan? Are we maybe looking at doing a consumer proposal, or even falling into a bankruptcy, to be able to help them actually see a light at the end, where the stress of the debt, to be able to open up their budget to be able to focus on the future.
So when you meet with somebody, then you're not necessarily just discussing the options that you provide. It sounds like you're giving a pretty good overview of everything that's available to the client so that they can make a decision from there.
Exactly. They need to understand that sometimes it's just a matter of a fresh set of eyes looking at a budget, things that they didn't realize, and I often will say to people, you need to go through and be honest with yourself what you're spending. Are you constantly going out for coffees and you don't realize that dollars every day amounting to? Are you constantly putting those transactions onto your credit card, again, without even thinking about it, because of the ease of tapping and the ease of being able to transfer that? So when you get a fresh set of eyes looking at a budget, when you are able to honestly go through and really admit to, okay, this is where my spending is happening. Sometimes it's as simple as just changing the dynamic of what the spending is.
And does it cost anything to come and meet with you, or what's associated in the costs?
There is absolutely no cost. The consultations are free, and of course they're confidential. So being able to come in and just talk to a professional, help is there. We're able to explain it. We're able to go through the options. We're able to sort of take some of that, I like to use the analogy, you're taking that backpack of financial debt away, leaving it behind, and be able to move forward onto the next, the next chapter of your financial health.
For those that come in and see you who are maybe in a position where all they need to do is perhaps adjust their spending or adjust their budget. I was thinking about this earlier today, that as soon as you sort of say the word budget to somebody, the wall goes up, and it's a little bit hard to break through that. But I was thinking today that giving the tools just to allow or show someone, just start off by tracking income and expenses for a month or two. Do you see any value in doing that?
For sure. I actually always say to people, track on a daily. If you can, even for 1 month, take the dedication to be able to track down what are you spending every day, because you're going to find that you're caught in some hidden kind of spending trends, things that you weren't aware of. So if you can look at that, because a budget really is setting kind of a guess, what I guess I'm going to spend for the month, being able to then go back and actually reflect, whether it's weekly or monthly, what did I actually spend? How close to my budget am I actually looking? Because that can show a lot. Do I need to cut back? Do I need to adjust that budget so that I'm looking at actual numbers instead of kind of what I'm guessing I should be able to put towards my debt or my savings?
I think that guessing part is really difficult, because with the people that we meet with on a regular basis, most, unfortunately, struggle with being able to tell what their income is as well as what their accurate expenses are. So I think just recording those things on a regular basis, because when we're talking about dealing with credit card debt, it's finding those ways or resources that we already have in our own hands and seeing that one adjustment in this one area will have huge benefits to be able to pay off perhaps the credit card debt that we're having to deal with. And then from there, it's possible to build a more accurate budget and foundation to work from as well. And so those types of tools I like to give to people as well when I'm talking to them in the consultations. So Kirsten, I really appreciate all the advice that you've been giving to us. Do you have any final advice for the people that are watching?
Well, I think the most important thing is to not be afraid to reach out. These are uncertain times. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are feeling really overwhelmed. And so being able to realize that you're not alone, that there's help out there. And we're free. We are able to come up with something that's going to change your trajectory for your future, to kind of make a no obligation meeting and just have someone kind of help you, take your hand and lead you forward.
And if someone is out there facing unmanageable credit card debt or any kind of debt that is available to them, how can they reach out to you and set up a consultation?
Well, you can either call 1-855-BDO-DEBT or on our web at bdodebt.ca. And by setting up an appointment, whether it's virtual, over the phone, or in person, we can do all of those now. So we can make the connection without feeling that this is going to be something overwhelming. We're here to help.
Well, thank you again so much for being here and sharing your advice for our viewers. And I also want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Until next time, I'm Shannon Jackson.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.